All right, we are live. Welcome to Pistons Jack Fan Reacts. Got some special guests here to open the show once again, who I'll introduce in just a moment. But before I do, this is your chance to come up and get the frustrations of tonight's game off your chest. We've got Wes and Blake here from the Pin Down over at Detroit Bad Boys. Obviously, Wes does producing work for the Pistons Pulse with Bryce and Amari. But how are we doing, fellas?
Man, doing good, Jack. Thank you for having us on. I wish it was after a better game, but hey, we're here to talk about it. No matter what happens. Frustrating game. Cade looked good offensively. Obviously, the turnover is something you have to clean up, but overall disappointing game. And then you have to head back home and play the defending champs tomorrow night. So not
Yeah,
ideal, but it's just game two.
Wes.
Yeah, wish it was under better circumstances, like Blake said, but I'm happy to be here, kind of opening up the live at post game reaction with you, Jack. So that's exciting. Even if the Pistons are bad, we get to do fun stuff like this. So it's not all bad, right? It's not all bad.
No, it's not. And like just before we went live, I was saying you guys like it's actually so good to see you, but I'm just feeling like so frustrated. So I appreciate that point of view, Wes. Well, look, let's get into the game. Detroit lost in Cleveland 101-113 in a game. I feel like to me, it felt like they never were really going to win, but they had some runs where they could have got it back to within two. Just a really frustrating experience. I think last game against Indiana felt like a missed opportunity. Tonight was, I don't think, a missed opportunity. I think it was more just frustrating all around, like frustrating all around. But I guess, Blake, where I want to go first is I think the biggest thing tonight was just 22 turnovers. Um, like, I just don't think you're winning any games turning over that many, let alone against probably a top four seed on the road. Um, yeah, how you feeling?
Yeah, not great. It's tough because nine of them came from Cade, and Cade had 30 points through the third quarter. So he really kept the Pistons in this game. Like it felt like it should have been a blowout, and it didn't even really end in a blowout, but it felt like the game should have been over a lot sooner than it was. And yeah, that's something that needs to be cleaned up. Like nine turnovers for anyone is unacceptable. There was one at the end that was probably a frustration, offensive foul and everything like that. But you also have three turnovers from Isaiah Stewart, who didn't even put up a shot in the whole game. And it's like, what is going on
Don't
there?
worry, we're
So
going to get to the bigs tonight because I want to hear Wes's thoughts on a couple. But sorry to cut you off, Blake, but we are getting
no,
to those guys.
no, I mean that's a huge talking point, honestly. I mean, the turnovers were just coming in bunches right out of the gate, and it felt like once a few mistakes were happening, it continued to happen, and it wasn't just Cade by any means. I mean, his number of turnovers jumps off the page at you, but overall, like the Stewart number, you can't have those every night or anything like that. But yeah, you're not going to win many games when you turn the ball over 22 times and the other team does 10 less than that. Even though it's a much better team and they're competing for something totally different than the Pistons are, but yeah, just something to take away. I just thought the energy wasn't there compared to what it was in the opener, and I hope you can turn it around quickly and learn from it because you got a heck of a test starting less than 24 hours later. It's a tall task, but if there's a wake up call, like maybe that's it.
For sure. And I guess, Wes, I kind of want to get into what were your key takeaways from the game? It was like the turnovers, I think, are the biggest takeaway, and feel free to share thoughts on that. But what else kind of stood out to you?
Well, I think the turnovers were actually kind of a product of something separate that was at least a takeaway for me. I mean, this game felt very much like Cade out on an island and no one else doing all that much to help him out. Jaden Ivey, I agree with Bobby Buckets. He had a really nice night, but he should have played more, right? He got into foul trouble. So, Jaden Ivey getting his 16 shot attempts and putting up 22 points, the majority of that comes without Cade on the floor. So when Cade's out there, Tobias Harris played a lot. He was fairly ineffective offensively. Tim Hardaway Jr. doesn't do much with the ball in his hands. Malik Beasley, I thought, was better than he was against the Pacers, but his defensive issues were iffy and popped up again as well. So, it just – I know Cade had the 9. Really, it was 7. He had the charge late, and he also just chucked the ball at someone's foot for some reason with like 3 minutes to go. Don't know what was going on there. Clearly forcing it, just desperate at the end of the game. But so of the 7 real turnovers that he had, the Cavs really were able to key in on him all night, and that was not the case against the Pacers. So I think that really stood out to me, even though he had a great scoring night.
Yeah, and the thing, so I got cooked a little bit because my post-game Cade thing, I didn't put the turnovers in there. And I ended up putting them in there because it's fair enough. But 6 of those 9 came in the first half. So
Yep.
I thought he was a bit loose. Like, I think some of those were really bad, and that's valid, and he should be held account to those. But I thought when the game was there to be won and they were down by 4 points I think towards the end of that third quarter, I felt like he had done everything to get them back to level. So that's why I'm not giving him a pass, because if you have 9 turnovers, like I'm not going to argue against that's, it's hard to win when your best player is having 9 turnovers. But I think the context of those, when the game really, like, it's there to be won no matter what. But I just thought in that third quarter, he did everything to get them back. And then just to see them close that third quarter, not only go down by double digits, but more than they were at halftime after he had that sort of quarter, that felt like the nail in the coffin.
And it's the third quarter, right, where Jaden Ivey's in foul trouble, so he sits down for the last 9 minutes of it. You don't even get Tobias Harris's first basket until about the 7-minute mark. Fontecchio, same thing. His first basket of the season comes late in the third quarter. I mean, it was Cade out on his own without much help on either end of the floor. Not what you want to see. I mean, you want to see from Cade, but not from anyone else.
So this is the thing here. Like, I was maybe going to wait until we got to Cade, but how much of Cade, so I had someone tweet something at me, but basically my response was about Cade. I like it when he either gets a high screen early, like as soon as he gets in the half court within the first couple of seconds, or he gives it off, does some sort of cut and comes back and gets the ball. When he's just holding the ball for the first 8 to 10 seconds and just dribble, how much of that is on JB and the coaching staff? How much of that is on Cade to get off the ball quicker or make a decision? Because I feel like even the Pacers, like Nembhard in that first half, like he had Cade kind of rattled. And then Cade obviously turned it around. But how much of it is on Cade to get this offense moving? Because I think as the lead guy, sometimes I think he kind of holds onto the ball a bit too long, but he's also talented enough to do that. So, Blake, what are your thoughts on that?
So I think, and I'm trying to decide if this is something that is just JB's overall philosophy, or if it's how he's working with the roster that he was given. But it just seems so clear to me that the plan is to run everything through your guards. A lot of the time, that's going to be Cade. It's also going to be Ivy. Like, when Malik Beasley is on the floor, he's doing a lot more with the ball than we thought he would. Like, Wes, we talked about that last night, and it carried over into this game as well. Like, just looking at the shot attempts, Cade put up 24, Ivy 16, Beasley 11. Those are your only 3 players with more than 10 shot attempts. So I think whether it's Cade and Ivy on the floor, Cade and Beasley, whoever it is, it's just one of the guards has to be the initiator, and the other guard, they're trying to get the ball to them in motion. in some way, whether it's a cut, a DHO, whatever it is. So I don't know. Like, I feel like I need to see a few more games of it to see if the variance between the shot attempts amongst the position groups is this crazy. But that's something that's definitely stood out to me. Jack, I feel like I didn't answer your question at
That's
all,
okay.
but like that is just something that jumped off the page. And like my point was, I feel like even if Cade is having one of those possessions where he starts in the corner, like it's probably gonna end up with him, or if it's not him, he's looking for Ivy or his shooter, whether it's Beasley or THJ in the corner on the wing.
Yeah, for sure. And I think another thing tonight with kind of what we're talking about with Cade, like it felt like Allen and Mobley, like they're both terrific defensive bigs, and it felt
Yeah.
like they just completely neutralized any pick and roll game. Like I don't think I saw Cade run find JD on the pick and roll once. I might have, but Wes, what are your thoughts like on the Pistons bigs tonight? So um, I thought Paul Reed, like first game, like it's hard to have many takeaways, but I thought Jalen Duran and Isaiah Stewart kind of really let this team down.
Yeah, hard not to agree with that. I mean, you look at even Duran, like his biggest strength is rebounding, right? He only had 7. Ron Holland, for reference, also had 7 rebounds in 17 minutes. I think for Duran, there were a couple of times I liked his activity on on the defensive end, but by and large, it was more negative than it was positive. Isaiah Stewart, I actually thought played all right defensively. Offensively, it was a train wreck again, just like it was against the Pacers. So that's not great. But he was effective defensively. I liked what he was bringing on that end. Of course, he only plays, 11 minutes because of his foul trouble. I think 2 of them were charges on so those are offensive. That's really not what you want out of him when he's not driving to the hoop hardly at all. So not a banner day for the bigs. There's no nicer way to put that. It was a really bad night from those 2 guys. Paul Reed, like you said, you kind of just wave it off. I thought he played with good effort and energy. He just kind of was outclassed a little bit. And Mobley and Allen are both all-star caliber big men in the NBA, so I think they showed it, and I think Duran and Stewart showed the struggles that we know they can have individually. Duran was not very good defensively at all. He was getting lost quite a bit. His closeouts have been a really big issue between these 2 games. He's missing a lot of X outs as well, but just the closeout in particular, hands down, not great. And then Isaiah Stewart just needs to figure out what he's doing on offense again, because it can't be this for the rest of the year.
Yeah, it's Stu. Yeah, has had a first 2 games have been relatively rough for what we think he should be as the backup big. Like, yeah, he needs to be knocking down threes and just not turning it over at a bare minimum. Like I think Wes, you mentioned the charges there. He also had like a fumbled handoff. I think like those types of things, like just giving away possessions like that, are just absolute killers. I think I've got some other things to go with through regarding Cade, Ivy, and some other players, but Pistons now 0-2. I think like they've lost to the Pacers, who were last season's Eastern Conference finalists. What, like, you can argue whether or not they should have been there due to injuries, but they were there and they gave Boston a real shot in those first 2 games. They've lost to the Cavs, who I feel like they just blew out the Raptors by 30 in Toronto. Evan Mobley seems like he's taken some sort of leap. He hit a couple of threes tonight. Like, they've got Donovan Mitchell, who's one of the best offensive players in the league. Darius Garland, you just throw him in as well. How should we be feeling? Like, I know we're frustrated, but it's also like the fact they're 0-2 should not surprise anyone when you look at who they've versed. So maybe I'm asking this to bring maybe some positivity, but like Blake, like how should Pistons fans be feeling?
I mean, I think after the Pacers game, I was feeling okay. It obviously fell apart at the end. It was a very winnable game, and you want the team to grow into being able to win those games and knowing how to do that after the Cleveland game tonight. I don't know. This one just felt a little like there might be, like, it's not like the roster is totally turned over in the sense that you have a new core. Like, you're trying to see if your young players work together and add players who can complement them. But I think if you can take some positives, it's you've played two teams who, like, not only the Pacers were in the Eastern Conference Finals, the Cavs won a playoff series last year too. And then tomorrow night you're playing the team that won the title. Like,
We'll get to that.
yeah,
I'm scared.
it's not easy. I mean, after Boston, Miami is a winnable game, but then you play the Sixers and the Knicks. Like, it's not an easy schedule. We knew that. I just think if there is a way that they can at least find a way to compete. I mean, the biggest takeaway for me against Cleveland was just their defense kept them out of the game. If it wasn't the turnovers, it was just all the lackluster defense. So hopefully that's something that they can take back on the trip back to Detroit, talk about it and be like, this is unacceptable, and nip it in the bud. It's a lot to ask with who you're going to be playing the next night and over the next few games, but hopefully by the time you get to the Brooklyn Nets game, things are a little bit better.
Yeah, like, speaking about defensive stuff, like, Dean Wade is going to be in my nightmares shooting wide open threes. Like, and that, like, Cade left him multiple times. Like,
Harris too, lost him a couple of times for a bet. That's unacceptable.
And they did. Max Strus is out. Like, if he was in, he would have been killing them. And I mean, Ty Jerome, like, picking them apart the way they did was like, wow.
Yeah.
Almost exclusively on Fontecchio in that third quarter too. Like, that was a really bad stretch for him defensively, especially.
Well, I mean, I think there's Wes. I'm going to get to Tobias and Fontecchio next, because I think they've been two of the more disappointing players through two games. Just in regards to the question I asked before, like, how you're one, I would say you're probably one of, if not the most level-headed Pistons fan I've come across. Say that in a complimentary way. How are you feeling 0-2 after watching these two games and the preseason as well, I guess, because that does matter to an extent.
Man, that's a heck of a setup. I hope I live up to this level-headedness that you see in me, Jax. Thank you. I appreciate it. That was a great compliment. Look, I don't think that the 0-2 is the reason that I'm frustrated, or that I think all of us are frustrated. I kind of think with this game in particular, it was that there were some things that really went right tonight that didn't go right last year. I just did the math because ESPN's box sheet is weird, but the Pistons shot, I think it was 41% from three. That's a really good night. All right. Cade went off 33 points. He had 6 assists. Yeah, he negative assist to turnover ratio, but he still had a really nice night offensively. Jaden Ivey was getting to the free throw line, putting pressure on the bigs. So you had all this kind of going right. Shots were going in. They still only scored 101 points. And I almost think that the spacing getting fixed a little bit to some extent has put more of a magnifying glass on some of the issues that were there last year that seem to have at least carried over through these first two games. So issues such as Jalen Duren just being a strongly negative defender at the 5 spot, but still playing 30 minutes. Isaiah Stewart not being able to put the ball on the floor if someone puts a hand up in front of him. Fontecchio has been bad, but he's not been, I don't know, like, I don't think he's been uniquely bad. We saw some off stretches from him down the stretch last season as well. The only real shock so far has just been Tobias Harris not being able to get it together offensively yet for a full game. And you know he will. He's a veteran. He's proven it. So I don't know. To me, it feels just like we are seeing some successes, and those successes are unfortunately making it more obvious the deficiencies that have been there for about a season to a season and a half at this point. which is frustrating, really frustrating.
Yeah, I think frustrating is the word of the day for this game. Like, I think a lot of us are, even if you want to call them irrational Pistons fans, like I think they would admit being 0-2 with the teams we've played isn't like that in itself in a vacuum isn't and like to unexpected. It's just like you were outlining there, Wes. Like it's just super frustrating because some of those same issues are rearing their head. There's obviously some changes, like you meant with the shooting, Ivy taking some sort of a leap forward. But you mentioned Tobias Harris, and I think through 2 games, he's scored 23 points combined on 9 of 22 shooting. So, and it should be mentioned, I think he was scoreless in the second half of the first game and scoreless in the first half of this game. So, he went a full 48 minutes without scoring a bucket. For a guy who I've kind of defended the signing, kind of thought it was crazy that people were criticizing the Pistons heavily for it. It's only 2 games, but like Blake, what are your thoughts? Because I just feel like you kind of did not notice he was out there, which is something a lot of people who have watched Tobias Harris will say. But yeah, what are your thoughts?
I think what you pointed out, Jack, on like just the sheer amount of time he went without getting a bucket is the concern for him. Like obviously Tobias is a veteran. You know, he can be that calming presence for a predominantly young team on the floor. But I think the biggest thing that he should bring to this team is like if Cade isn't going, if he's off to a slow start, which Tobias did this in the first game, and similar if it's Ivy, like Tobias should be able to pick up that slack, be that guy you can go to get a bucket. So it worries me a bit that we saw that tremendously long stretch where he didn't score. I mean, maybe he will just be streaky. I don't think this is going to last by any means, but overall, I think that's the biggest concern of the first 2 games we've seen on this stint of Tobias Harris with the Pistons for me, because I just think he needs to be that outlet on the perimeter for Cade and Ivy as they're driving. And if like Cade had a great offensive performance tonight against Cleveland, but in the opener, he came out a little bit slow in the first half. That's been the case a lot of times throughout his career. Like sometimes he doesn't get it going until the second quarter or maybe the second half. So I feel like Tobias really needs to be that guy that the Pistons can go to in those moments. So if he disappears for that long of a stretch, it's a worry. Trying not to overreact to just 2 games and developing chemistry with this group and everything, but that's the main thing that I'll be looking for moving forward.
Yeah, for sure. Like, and Wes, like you kind of mentioned another player who I think we had, when I say high expectations, like I think Fontecchio, the way he played with Detroit last season in those last 20 games or whatever, like I know I was very excited for what he could bring this season. And Derek Brown brings up a good point. I forgot that Fontecchio did have, I think it was foot surgery this summer. So maybe I was being a bit too harsh saying he's had a poor start, but any thoughts on him? Like I know you kind of shared them, but
He's just been uncharacteristically hesitant, I think, through these first 2 games, which is odd. He wasn't very hesitant in the preseason, and the preseason obviously came before the season started, so it would have been, before this and his progression on his rehab from that surgery. I have to think it's probably just a cold stretch out of him. He's trying to find his rhythm with the bench unit, where his shot's going to come from, that sort of thing. He only took 4 shots, all of them threes. He made 1, so good start. I think the fourth quarter he was better. That was probably the best he looked. He had a couple really nice stops against Donovan Mitchell, moved his feet really well. Hit that 3 late in the third quarter, got 2 free throws, I think, in the fourth. Hopefully that's a turnaround sort of moment here for Fontecchio. And then just to loop back to Tobias Harris real quick, I want to defend him a little bit, and that's just because I think that these are two very bad matchups for Tobias Harris on both sides of the ball. So defensively, I mean, this tracks all the way back to his time with the Pistons. He struggles with bigger guys who can shoot, which is Siakam and Mobley. It looks like early on this year he's stretching the floor more than he has in the past. And then offensively, he's a catch and play kind of guy. He's not someone that you're calling isolations for all that often or getting him a ball screen to play out of. He's a guy that catches it off in rotation and then is either making a decision to shoot or put the ball on the floor and try to create. And against the Pacers, he struggled to put the ball on the floor and get to his mid-range pull-up because Siakam and Turner are very long and they're able to recover. And we saw the exact same thing early on in this game. He had a couple where he tried to get by Jared Allen and one against Evan Mobley as well that just he couldn't get enough space. It was a very well contested shot on his part because those two guys are both 7-footers with long arms and are athletic. And Tobias Harris is a fine athlete, but he's no Ron Holland or Star Thompson or Jaden Ivey, right? He's more just proficient. So I would expect he's going to play quite a bit better against the Celtics. That's more his speed in terms of matchups. And like he had 5 assists, 5 rebounds. Outside of his scoring, I thought he had actually a pretty solid night. Offensively, defensively is another story. He struggled, which you didn't love, but at least offensively, I think he was okay.
Yeah, for sure. And we've got Cody coming up next from the home court days, Wes. He's going to jump on. So I wanted to go for another 5 minutes or so here before I get Cody up. But just some thoughts on Cade and Ivy. So Cade tonight, I feel like we've spoken a little bit about Cade so far, but 33 points, just under 60% from the field, 9 turnovers. Blake, thoughts on Cade through 2 games so far?
I mean, other than the turnovers tonight, which I mean, because this turnover discussion was a big thing starting last season, and he improved there. Being a guy who's as high usage as Cade, he's not gonna have 0 or 1 turnover on most nights. You just want to limit it. Like it can't be near the 9 or the 7 actual ones. But other than that, I thought he's been everything you can ask for. Like he really kept the Pistons in the game against Cleveland. He had 18 points in the first half, I believe, and then had 12 in the third quarter. The third quarter was pretty much just Cade taking matters into his own hands and keeping the Pistons in that game that they probably shouldn't have been in. Wes and I podcasted on the Pin Down last night talking about the Indiana game, and I said after one game, the question heading into the season was, is Cade, first and foremost, is he able to lead a team that will make the playoffs and eventually contend for a title, but also could he take that leap into being an all-star as soon as this season? After game 1, I said yes. After 2 games, I'm still gonna say yes. Obviously, it depends on how the Pistons are doing and everything like that. But I think if Cade continues on what he's doing, he should certainly be in the all-star conversation. It just depends on everything else that's happening around him.
Sure. And Wes, thoughts on Cade?
I thought he's played great through the first 2 games, especially offensively. One thing I really want to see more out of him defensively. I like how Bickerstaff is kind of hiding him out on the wing. They haven't asked him to guard many guards yet. I think that's intentional. It certainly looks like it's intentional. He was on Naismith against the Pacers, primarily on Dean Wade in the first half against the Cavs. There were a couple times in both games where he's gotten a steal or a tip pass, kind of playing that free safety role, roaming a little bit on defense. I wish he'd do that more. I know it's a little risky, but I think the upside there could be pretty high. So offensively, like you said, Blake, cut down on the turnovers, but he did in the second half. I think he spent only 1 check in the third quarter, which was the majority of his second half minutes after 6 in the first half. I think at that point you could kind of chalk that up to a blip unless it pops up again against the Celtics tomorrow. Don't know what more you could really ask outside of a little bit more on that defensive side. If you could wreak a little bit more havoc, cause a few turnovers here and there, for the other team, not himself, I think that would be a really big plus.
For sure. And then final thing, I was going to ask you about Jaden Ivey, but I think before I let you guys go here, the Pistons next 5 games, they go play Boston tomorrow at LCA. Then they travel to Miami a couple of days later. Then they play Philly, which I believe I saw a report that will be Embiid's return game in Philadelphia.
Of course, yeah.
Then they play the Knicks at home a couple of days later, and then they travel to Brooklyn. So their next 4 games are potentially against, Miami had a pretty bad opening night, but at Miami, like that's a tough game. What do you think? Like, what's going to happen these next 4 games? Like, yeah. Blake, you can go first.
Man,
yeah, give it to Blake first. Give me more time, man.
Blake, I'd like.
To be clear, are you asking me for a prediction?
Yes,
a prediction, and then just like your vibes on it. Like, we don't have to go about X's and O's or whatever. Just your vibes. Like, how are you feeling, really?
It's tough because I'm trying not to bring too much recency bias into this coming off the Cleveland game, because like you said, it was just frustrating overall. But looking at the next 5, it's not easy by any means, but I think being 0-2, you gotta grab at least 2 of these games. And I mean, I'll look at the Heat, like you said, Jack, not an easy game on the road, and then the Nets as well. But knowing the Pistons, like, they'll probably steal one against the Celtics and find a way to beat the Knicks, and then drop games that we think they shouldn't drop. But overall, I think as long as they come out with a different energy, because it just felt a little off to me against Cleveland compared to what it was against Indiana in the opener. And I know home opener, new team, first game, and they're coming off a tough loss. Like, I'm not shocked. It was a little bit of a letdown spot. I also thought the Pistons would get up a little bit more for this one, just with the fact of it being a revenge game for JB Bickerstaff. But overall, I hope it was a wake-up call and they can find a way to win at least a couple in the next 5.
Yeah, for sure. Wes, I have the Miami game. So I think Boston tomorrow, like, I have no expectations. I truly, the super fan in me thinks they can win because it's at home. But realistically, I think that game, like, you can't have expectations for that. Maybe I'm too kind or something. I don't know. But the Miami game for me is like the one I think they need to win. So, like, I guess with knowing the next 5 games, yeah, what are your vibes? How are you feeling?
I'm just gonna stick to my guns. We talked about this, Blake, before the season started in kind of our final preseason like prediction type episode. But if they continue to play with the effort that we saw against the Pacers, and honestly, I thought that they opened the game up okay. It was a little bit of a letdown. They weren't nearly as intense, but it's not like they started off in the malaise it looked like everyone but Cade was in that third quarter. Okay. They didn't finish this game well at all, but the first half wasn't a low effort half. It was a foul trouble and turnover happy half, but they were still flying around. So I think if they continue to play with that kind of energy, they're probably going to catch 1 team, maybe 2. And truthfully, that's probably the best hope you could have for the rest of the season too. Like, this team is not in a position where they're going to out talent too many other rosters in the NBA. But if they're going to come in and play really hard, play with that young energy that they should have, being one of the youngest teams in the NBA, they're going to catch some teams. They're going to catch some teams on their off nights. They're just going to get hot randomly. It's the NBA. These are all very talented guys, so it's going to happen. All right. Not against the Celtics. I'll say that not against the Celtics on a back-to-back after this. I mean, if you want any reason for hope, Isaiah Stewart only played 11 minutes. I mean, Cade at 35, but him and Harris are the only guys over 30 because of all that foul trouble they had. Maybe they're rested, more rested than they otherwise would have been on a back-to-back.
No, I think, look, I think another positive I'll just add there is I think internally, like, I feel like going into tomorrow's game against the Celtics, like, there's zero expectation. Like, as in, like I feel like they're going to play free and maybe they can catch the Celtics. Maybe the Celtics, Jaylen Brown said they take nights off against teams like the Pistons. He said that. So, like I don't think they're going to rest players this stage of the season, but like maybe because of that little expectation, like part of me would be a bit more worried if on the back-to-back they're playing like the Trailblazers and they're expected to win. And then if they lose that, the confidence could be a bit shot, just a little bit. But because they're playing the Celtics, like maybe this is the most wishful thinking ever, but maybe they could pinch a win. But I'm very doubtful. But look, guys, thank you so much for coming on. I can't wait to have you on. You're welcome whenever.
Thank you,
every
man.
single game. But Blake, West, tell the people where they can find you. I mentioned the podcast off the top. You're doing amazing work, but tell the people where they can find you.
Thank you, Jack. And yeah, we're definitely going to have you back on the Pin Down. Me and Wes, we record normally Thursday evenings. That's going to be a little bit flexible now that the Pistons are in the season. Like if they're playing on Thursday nights, we might go later or record on Fridays. But other than that, check out DetroitBadBoys.com, putting up some written content up there. I'm actually going to be working on a game preview for the game tomorrow night, so check that out on the site. I saw our guy Bobby Buckets in the chat. He just got up a preview on the Cavs game, so the whole staff over there is putting up a bunch of stuff. And Wes, I'll throw it over to you to plug the Pistons Pulse that I'm assuming everyone already listens to, like they have to be, and anything else.
Yep. Just make sure, of course, if you're not, please do listen to the Pistons Pulse through the Detroit Free Press. Bryce and Amari are awesome. They do great stuff. Again, you should already know this, so I'm hopefully preaching to the choir. Then the only other,
Wes. Come on.
Well, I'm in the background. I'm not on that one. I think we're doing great stuff with the Pin Down as well, but that would be like, I'm on that one, so I'd like to keep them separate in that way. The only other thing that I would add is, guys, if you're watching this right now, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. Like, let's help Jack grow this thing. I think this is a great little post-game reaction show. I'm going to want to hop back on here a couple more times. This has been fun. And like you said, we definitely got to get you on the Pin Down.
For sure, boys. Now, it's been a pleasure to have you on. Love talking hoops with you. And keep killing it. And check out everything at Detroit Bad Boys. Like, that's where I started. Love DBB, everyone there. So guys, thank you so much. Enjoy your night now. Pistons are over. Get the frustration off you. And we'll do it all again tomorrow.
Likewise, Jack. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys. Bye. All right. We have got my man, Cody. He's been waiting. I appreciate his patience.
Hey, Jack.
What's going on, my man?
How you doing? Can you hear me?
I'm good, bro. I'm good. I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, I got you. Loud and clear.
All right, my man. So, first of all, awesome to chat hoops with you again, man. It's been a minute, but
It's been a while.
I want to, I've sort of shared my thoughts. I got some talking points here, but I'm keen to hear your thoughts because you've sent me some good DMs the past few days. You had me laughing a little bit. So your hoops, but I'm keen to hear your thoughts on this game and go for it on the Pacers game as well, I feel like.
I guess, do you want me to start with the positives or the negatives?
Oh, we've been pretty negative, so maybe go positives if that's all right. That might be pretty quick.
So I'll start positives. I think that the spacing this year is much better. I think that, I noticed a lot of the time that Cade could get into the post and work angles and different looks from there. And that's something that couldn't really happen last year because teams would just double right away as soon as he caught it because they lack threats of shooters. At least now they have threats of shooters. They're still not making it at a high clip, but at least they have those options.
For sure.
I think overall it's going to lead to Cade having a lot more ease of access to the rim as well as that mid-range pull-up that he really loves. I like that Cade came out really aggressive tonight early and established himself. That was my big complaint from the other night against the Pacers. I thought he really came out and deferred, which he did a lot last year, which if, this team's only going as far as Cade can take them. So I think him coming out and, scoring, the first 7 points of the game really, really was encouraging. I think that the defense is definitely more active. They're still not good,
Yeah.
but they're definitely more active, and definitely forcing more turnovers or I guess bad looks, more so in the first half than the second half. I thought the second half their defense was really porous and they just gave up a lot of easy open looks to 3-point shooters, which you can't do in the NBA. Jaden Ivey, I thought he played really well tonight. I really liked what I saw from Jaden Ivey.
Great. I love that you brought this up because I actually haven't spoken much about Ivy, but far away because he had 22 points, 50% from the field, 40% from three. Foul trouble plagued him, but what are your thoughts on him so far?
I think my main takeaway so far on Jaden is that his handle looks way tighter.
Yeah,
he looks way more comfortable putting the ball on the floor, and it's helping him use his explosive athleticism to get to the rim a lot, and he's getting there. He's drawing fouls. I would like to see him make more free throws. I think he's already missed 4 or 5 this year, which is discouraging. For a guard who I think can shoot it pretty well. But I think he played really well today. I think that he would have had an even better game if he didn't have those 2 fouls in about 4 seconds in the third, which really, I mean, you just can't have 2 fouls in 4 seconds. It seemed like he was frustrated with the call, and then he just reached. I mean, that's something that you would think for a guy who's been in the league for a few years, that kind of stuff. Yeah. You'd expect to see that more from Ron Holland than you would Jaden Ivey. But I was really encouraged by him. I thought, in the second half, I mean, I didn't really have a lot of good positive takeaways. I think the only thing that you can take out of it is, Cade came out and carried. I think as Wes kind of talked about, I think that's both a positive and a negative, because it did feel like he was on an island in that third quarter and kind of really had to carry them to get them back in that game. But I mean, overall, I think the defense is going to be better than last year, assuming Asar is back at some point where it's not too late in the season. And then I think that the spacing and the offense has potential once they start making shots, especially like Fontecchio, Tobias, those guys making their open looks.
No, there's something you mentioned there, which I love you brought it up, because I think especially in that Pacers game, we saw Cade. Like, we know Cade has a mid-range game, and that's kind of like what he loves to get to. But the spacing is really opening that up. And, I think that's why we're seeing him now be able to do more post-ups. We saw last game he had a couple of really nice spin moves. And you really, I feel like NBA fans are getting to see his full game now on an NBA floor, which is really encouraging. But, I think maybe I'll just let you get to your negatives, because I feel like where I was going to go with this might include some of it. So,
I mean, obviously turnovers, brutal. You can't turn the ball over 22 times and win in the NBA, especially against a team, to your point, that I think is going to be a contender in the East. Maybe not like, a finals level team, but definitely a second round, very competitive team. Jalen Duren.
Yeah.
I don't want to be the guy for game 2, but I'm seeing the same stuff that I saw last year. Rear its ugly head. He and the frustrating thing is he did show flashes. He had a couple reps where he helped he helped over on off ball, and then he got back to Mobley, didn't jump, had a good contest. Like, he has some good reps, but overall, man, he's way too slow to close out. His effort's not consistently there on the boards. I think that Jalen is kind of like a rhythm quarterback in football. He's kind of like that guy who's like, if things are going well, I think he gets much more engaged and much more into it. When things are going poorly, I think he just checks himself out of the game. I don't think I don't know him obviously, but I don't, we speak so much about the dog in players and stuff. I just don't see a lot of dog from Jalen when things aren't going right.
Yeah.
I see a guy who lacks consistent effort. And yeah, I mean, just the bigs as a whole are a huge problem for this team. I mean,
yeah.
oh, go
I think
ahead.
that's a great point you bring up about when things aren't going well, he kind of disappears, because I think that's one of the biggest traits that reminds me of Andre Drummond. Like Andre, when things were going well and the Pistons were at home and, you know, he has those 2020s, sure, he can't finish around the basket sometimes like Jalen, but like when that's not their night, they don't really show up and you don't feel them. And I think that's a great point from you about Jalen, because they needed him tonight. Like the Cavs are huge, the front line. And yeah, he wasn't there. Like I don't think he's had a block shot this season, and the energy definitely hasn't been there in all 8 quarters he's played. So I hope he can turn that around tomorrow against the Celtics and show us
Yeah, I
consistent.
mean, I think that at least when it comes to the Celtics, that's a better matchup, right? You don't have a twin.
Well, the space.
Well, I don't know. Is
Horford,
Porzingis going to play?
no, Porzingis won't, but it's more like just the 5 out, like maybe Horford.
Yeah, I get that part.
But
of
I
it,
agree
like,
with you.
Rebounding offensively,
Yeah,
you know,
for
that
sure.
kind of stuff. He'll still struggle defense. I think he'll struggle defensively all year, but I think he can make a bigger impact on the offensive side of the ball. It's funny. I think about it every time I watch the Pistons. I'm like, gosh, if you could just morph Stewart and Duren into one guy, that could be a really good basketball player. But both of them separate are lacking severely in one area or another, which is frustrating. It's like, you know, like it's just like watching this game. I wrote it down. It's like the disparity between a team with good bigs and us is so glaring when you watch a game like that, because Mobley and Jared Allen are affecting the game in so many ways outside of, you know, your traditional, like, you know, box score stuff. They're great on rotations. They're great in pick and roll. Jared Allen had reps where he was guarding Cade at 3-point line and forcing him to tough shots. You get Donovan Mitchell switched onto Jalen Duren. It's, as Shaq would say, that's barbecue chicken every time. Like it's not a fair fight, but those guys are disciplined defensively and they're elite at it. And that's the biggest thing I think missing from this Pistons team. I think they need the elite wing defender back, Nassar, but their bigs don't give them enough on a night in, night out basis. And I think that's gonna cause JB to want to go small more often than not. Obviously tonight was a matchup you couldn't go small, but then you're just sacrificing defense for more offense at that point. So
it's no, for sure. The bigs, it's funny because it's like felt like Troy Weaver invested so much of his rebuild in bigs, whether it was draft picks, signings, and look, I really like Isaiah Stewart. I know he's had a really, pretty poor first 2 games. There's no questioning that, but you know, ultimately he's a backup big. So, Duran's really like, I see people. I think I'm getting a bit of feedback. Maybe just turn the volume on your phone down a touch.
yeah.
No, you're good. So people talk about Ivy having to prove that he's worth it up until the deadline, but I mean, Jalen Duren for me is just as bigger. Like he's got to prove it. Like I don't think they'll trade them at the deadline, but definitely this offseason, like Jalen Duren really needs to show like he can take some strides, because Paul Reed and Isaiah Stewart aren't starting bigs, so it's him or they need to go find one.
Yeah, and the tough part about it with him is, I think if he continues to play this way, his value just goes down more and more. Well, I just don't. His type of big is already starting, like a big who can't play defense and can't shoot. That's already getting phased out of the NBA pretty much. Like at least when you look at a Jared Allen, he's excellent around the rim finishing. He's a decent free throw shooter, and he's excellent defensively. That's why he's playable, especially with the Cavs, who have, it seems like 9 guys who can hit threes at any given time. Yeah. So he's always playable. Like the Pistons can't have a guy who, he struggles to finish. If it's not a dunk, he struggles to finish. He's not a good free throw shooter, and he's not a good defender. So like, how do you make him playable? Well, I think one of the only things he does well right now is his playmaking ability. I think he's pretty good in the DHO, and he's honestly the only big on the Pistons that can work out of a DHO, which is terrible.
I know it's it's a bit of a sore spot, the bigs. And like you talk about the trade value. I saw this trade earlier. Would you do a trade for Walker Kessler, giving up Stu and or Duran for Kessler and a first? Like, I honestly don't think Utah would do either of those.
Yeah, I know
Stu
they want.
because of
I
his
know
contract, and then Duran like
yeah, I
needs
know
to
they
show me.
talked about shopping Kessler, but there's no way they're giving up him and a first for either of those
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah, and like, yeah, I just think sometimes we maybe overvalue our own players a bit too much. But like, yeah, Duran's got a lot to prove. But I want to let you get to some more of your negatives. So obviously Jalen Duran was one, but was there anything else?
I'm gonna be a little hard on this guy, but at the same time, I think you guys talked about it briefly at the end. I had written in my notes the first half. I said, "Tech's doing wind sprints. He's not even sprinting that hard. He's unplayable at the moment." Like he was out there just running around off screens, not looking to shoot, and then defensively miserable. Like
Yeah,
traffic cone, Ole defense. Maybe it's just he needs to get more conditioning. Like he needs to
yeah,
he needs to get a little bit more wind in those lungs, I guess. But it's weird to me because you guys brought up in the preseason he was shooting at will. Like if he caught it and
yeah,
he was open, he shot it. Now it's just like he's not for some reason, and this offense desperately needs guys to step up and shoot it well because I mean outside of really Malik and Tim, no one's really shooting it that well. I mean, Cade was 2 of 6 for tonight. I think Ivy shot it well. I think he was like 2 of 3 or 2 of 4. But
yeah,
outside of those four guys, I mean, or those three guys, you don't have guys who can shoot it consistently from 3-point range. And like I mentioned with the Cavs, as soon as they have 9 guys who can hit threes, like, and they didn't even have Strus tonight, which is another guy who can bang home a million threes.
yeah,
We need Fontecchio, especially when he's in with that bench lineup, to provide a spark. Because it can't just be Malik and Jaden Ivey out there. Because I mean, I'm not going to take a shot at the Rook, but offensively, he really brings nothing to the floor.
yeah. Maybe we'll quickly talk about Ron then, because we haven't spoken about him yet. And I liked what I saw from him at Summer League, but literally in these first 2 games, teams are not going anywhere near him. Like he's been left wide open. And I don't mind that we're only 2 games in that he's taking those wide open shots, but part of me is like maybe cut, maybe move, maybe like because I don't think he hasn't hit a 3, and it feels like he's nowhere near hitting one. So thoughts on Ron, because I love his energy, but then there was that play which he didn't give away technical. It actually ended up working in his favor, but sometimes his emotion, I think, at key times has gotten the best of him. And it's a hard thing to balance because I like it, but I also am like, you're a rookie. Like, yeah, I don't know. Thoughts?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's funny because I have Ron in both my positive and negative in the second half.
Yeah.
And I wrote Ron getting really mad and Ron getting really mad. Like I feel like in that moment the team needed some fire.
Yeah.
Like they needed something and honestly, I don't like Niang. I think he's kind of a dirty player. I think he's that kind of guy that would like punch you in the back of the head. And then like when you turn around, he'd be like, "Wasn't me. What do you mean? What do you mean? It wasn't me."
That's such a good shout.
Like I just think he's like a dirty player. And I think Ron was just not having it.
Yeah.
And I think they actually need that energy. But in regards to the offense, I think, and it's starting to seem this way, but I think like you're seeing more and more guys come out of the G League Ignite and just not really be polished offensively. Like, you have your Jalen Green and you have your Scoot, but a lot of guys just aren't really polished offensively and aren't good in sets. And I think that right now Ron's only value this team from a scoring perspective is in transition. Yeah. I think that he can get out and run and he will get some easy layups and stuff like that. Just playing with energy. But I think outside of that, he can't hit a jumper and he's not a great finisher either. So it makes it really tough for him to score in the half court for sure.
Yeah, it's like I think he in both games has been a positive and a negative for me. Like I feel like tonight he had 7 boards. Like I think that was second on the team or tied for the most. Like he's really active, but obviously that kind of works against him at times. So like he's always so eager to score. I feel like he got up 6 shot attempts tonight, which I don't mind, but also at the same time, it's like I feel like he just needs a bit more self-awareness on some of those attempts. Like there was even a transition where he went, I think it was in the first half, and he just went right at Jared Allen, and it was just like I just feel like you're never going to make that layup, and then it went straight back down the other end. So just a bit more self-awareness. But he's a rookie, like the energy, see the potential, but maybe JB needs to rein him in a bit more. But then there was a foul trouble tonight. Like there's just, yeah.
And I think
so.
it's ultimately not really fair to Ron either, because I think if Azar doesn't have the blood clot, he's not playing.
Yeah.
So I think that he's being forced into a role that he's probably not ready for at the moment.
Yeah.
And he's just trying to impact the team in any way he can. But I think to your point, maybe less shots, maybe just more focusing on defense and rebounding. But at the same time, dude, like if teams are going to leave you wide open with a guy 15 feet off you in the corner, you kind of have to shoot it and at least try to get some respect, or else they're just going to ignore you completely. And then you're playing, 4-on-5.
Yeah. No, look, it's definitely much easier than said for me just to be like, cut, move, do something. Like I get like he backs himself and has confidence in himself. Like you got to shoot it. But I've been surprised that this early in the season teams are literally not defending him. Like I thought it would come at some point, but just not the first 2 games immediately. But.
Yeah, I mean, I don't give him. I give him more grace than I'm giving some of the other guys that I'm not impressed with so far. Because again, I think it would be really ideal if they had Azar right now and you could send him down to the G League, bring him up, bring him down, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, we don't know when the Azar situation is going to end, and that's going to be that's going to be the ultimate reason why he keeps playing, I think.
Yeah, maybe. What are your thoughts on this situation? Like, I know there's not anything, no real news on it, no updates, but how are you feeling about that situation? What's your gut feel?
Well, I think that he could be ready, honestly, but I think that the NBA, ever since the Chris Bosh situation, is going to be really, really careful with blood clots. Like, I think it was Christian Coloco for the Raptors.
Yeah,
he had an extended stint where he was sat for a long time because they needed to make sure everything was good. I mean, a blood clot is potentially life-threatening thing. So it's like, it's not just like an ankle or, a knee, tendonitis. It's like potentially serious, very, very serious thing. Like the last thing the NBA wants is they let a guy rush back. They don't do all the tests. They don't get every single opinion they can offer. And something happens when he's on the court.
Was that which NFL player was that a few seasons ago? Was that some sort of blood clot or something?
No. The DeMar Hamlin situation, I don't think was a blood clot. I could be wrong, but yeah, I mean, that's the last thing the NBA wants, right? Is in the middle of a game, player collapses on the court. Like they're going to be very careful with this, and honestly, I would rather know for sure that Azar is good than put him back out there and have something potentially happen to him.
Absolutely.
I know it hurts the team, but
no, absolutely. Like my stance is the same. Like I'm not asking you to be like, tell me when he's back. Like, because I think it kind of, and like it's good that you say that because I didn't mention it. But if he needs to sit out this whole season, like I'm so fine with that. I don't care. I won't be mad at True Weaver for drafting him. I won't be mad at Asar, the NBA. Like it's life threatening, like you said. But I guess if you had to put money on it, do you think we see him this season?
I do. Yeah. I think what will happen is they will, after they get all the answers, they get all the answers. I think they'll slowly start to ramp him up, his activity. And then I think what you'll probably see is like maybe he's in games for stretches of 3 or 4 minutes. Nothing major, and then yeah.
I just see you tweeting about the Packers sometimes. I have to
yeah. That's like the biggest bugaboo for me in the community because people are like, dude, how can you like the Packers and you're a Lions fan? And I have to explain the situation 900 times. Yeah, it's tough being a Pistons fan and a Packers fan because the Detroit community doesn't always respect you for liking the Packers, which I get.
Tell the people where they can find you, Cody. I'm getting some love for you in the comments here.
I don't have a channel. I'm debating bringing back the Spaces. I'm on Twitter at NoFlyZone906. My page, if you need more than that, is Forget the Pistons. It used to be another colorful word, but I decided to be less negative this year. So, yeah, you can find me there. I'm debating doing post-game Spaces again. I'll be tweeting throughout games, and I watch all 82, much like Jack, no matter how bad they are. So I'll be here rocking all year on Twitter mostly.
For sure. And no, I think what you're saying about Asar, like the 5 to minute stints, really be a slow ramp up. Like I don't think it would be reasonable to expect him to be playing 25 minutes plus in his first month back or something like that. I guess where do I want to go to next? We've covered a lot here, but maybe I'll turn it to you. Do you have any other thoughts? More how should I asked Wes and Blake this because how are you feeling after 0-2 overall? And then I've laid out the next 5 games. I'm not sure if you heard, but Boston, Miami, Philadelphia, New York, Brooklyn. Where are you where are you at with this team?
I think it's expected. The only thing that I'm frustrated about, really, what makes me the most frustrated, it's the same. It seems like no matter who you put into coach, no matter what 5 we have on the floor, it's the same issues year after year. Like it seems like they can't get out of their own way. Like the Indiana game, I was so much more encouraged, even though I was really mad at the end, because I feel like Indiana just started hitting shots at the end, and they played like a team that almost went to the Eastern Conference Finals should play against a team that they're better than. Tonight, I feel like I wrote down in my notes, I said, same old Pistons vibes in game 2. Yeah. I felt that even when they closed it to 4, they had no shot of winning. Like I just did not feel I literally felt like the Cavs just had a lapse. They called that timeout, and I was like, okay, it's over. They're gonna come back out. We're gonna do something stupid. They're gonna hit a couple threes or get an and one, a big momentum play. That's exactly what happened. They came out, they hit a couple threes, and we were down by 12, and literally felt like 90 seconds.
Yeah.
So, but I think overall, there's a lot. I feel it's weird saying this because last year we actually started better, 2-1. Showtime Pistons are back, all this and that. But I actually feel more encouraged about this team because I think the makeup of the team is better long term. But I mean, after game 1, I heard a lot of, this could be a play-in team. I mean, everything would need to break right for this team to be a play-in team. Like, I think you're staring down the barrel of sub 30 wins again and another top 5 pick. Unfortunately, I just think that, they'll catch some good teams. They'll beat some teams they should, but on a night-to-night basis, the talent cap's just too big in a lot of these spots.
Is that because I tend to agree. Like I think playing, like you said, it's only on the cards if everything hits. And they probably have to I feel like they got to make a move somewhere, potentially a backup point guard, potentially to get there. But I guess is that a bad thing then if they win 28 games and get the 3rd overall pick? Because I feel like that's potentially what Trajan wants. I still think he might not be settled with this young core, new GM or whatever he is title, but I feel like part of him probably wants to build his own core, maybe.
Yeah, and I mean, I was listening to you and Cooley the other night, and I do think there's something to the theory that Trajan tweaked this roster just enough to make them watchable, but not enough to make them good.
Yeah.
Because he's staring down the barrel next year, and he's like, there's Cooper Flagg, there's Ace Bailey, there's I'm blanking on his first name, but the Harper kid from Rutgers.
BJ,
there'll be other guys. There'll be other guys that rise as well. It's a loaded class.
Yeah.
So I don't think Trajan wanted them to be good enough to potentially play themselves out of that lottery. And I think honestly, after watching the first 2 games, I can maybe only see 3 or 4 teams, maybe 5, maybe 6 if things go well, that are going to be worse than us. So I think, they're still going to be in play for that. I really don't want it to be the same old thing though, where we know it's a lost season. We start getting hype for draft picks, and then we land 5th, and we miss out on, because I really do think in my early watches so far of I mean, I've only done like a little bit on the top couple guys, but I really do think Ace Bailey and Cooper Flagg are franchise changing players.
Yeah. Well, I think I saw someone in the comments here say the Pistons need another blue chip player. And, I think Ivy seems to be maybe like he has to do this for the whole season and more, but maybe Ivy can be a top 3 guy on a winning team. Like, if you know what I mean by like, if your 3 best players, like maybe, but outside of him, like, I love Asar, but I'm not sure how with his offensive game.
Yeah. And I mean, if you look at the roster, it's a lot of stopgap options, right? Like Tim
Yeah.
Hardaway's not going to be your long term. Malik signed a 1-year
Yeah.
deal. He'll be gone next year. Tobias is a nice bet to have in the room. And then you got a lot of decisions to make on these guys like Jalen Duren, Isaiah Stewart. I know you gave Isaiah Stewart the extension, but that contract is still very tradable if you find the right deal, of course. I think you got to start making some. There's a lot of. I think right now, if I had to guess, there's only 2 guys, because I do actually believe in Jaden Ivey. I think Cade and Jaden are really the only guys that I'm like, they will be here in 3 years.
Yeah.
I don't think, I'm not 100% sold on anyone else being here in 3 years.
That's very interesting, because I think a lot of people before last season would say that, but I think after last season, and by the way, I agree with you, but like I think a lot of people would say Asar and Cade. Now I'm really high on Asar's ceiling. I've said he probably has, if he actually got to his full potential, he might be like the best player on this team. But I don't think like the percentile.
You know why?
on that's
The only
low.
reason I don't put Azar in there,
Yeah,
because I think he's the only one outside of Kate, and I even think this about Ivy. I think if Azar was playing this year and playing really well, I think he's got the most trade value on the team outside of anyone but Cade. So I think that's why, like, if like Trajan actually does want to take a swing, I think Azar's your centerpiece, because like no matter what Pistons say, you can't build a package around Stu, Jalen Duren, and like Ivy would have good trade value, but I think there's still a lot of teams that might look at his like defensive ability and say, and a lot of teams might say I see a lot of teams in the NBA could use an Asar right now, the way he played last year. Like I think he would be good enough to play in a playoff rotation for a lot of teams. Maybe not the best teams, like the top level, but I think he could crack minutes on a lot of teams just with his defense, not even with having a bunch of scoring ability or scoring.
I think that's what's so frustrating, though, man. Because it's like, so why should the Pistons have to give that up? But I fully understand what you're saying. Like to get,
I mean, I'm not saying we should or anything, but I think that if you're looking at just from a pure what value do these guys have around the league, I think Azar has tremendous. I think he would, especially if everything comes back with a blood clot, he's fine long term. I think teams look at him and they're like, we can make this guy work in our team. And I think it would be like a trade for like one of those guys that are disgruntled on a bad team that like a Zach LaVine type trade, but not Zach LaVine potentially.
Yeah, no, I get you for sure. Oh man, we're already talking about. We're not talking about trades, but we kind of are. Like we're not saying I need a trade.
We were talking about like long term outlook of the team. Like, what do you think? Like that. No,
I'm just joking. It's just we're 2 games in, bro. Man, any other thoughts, man? This has been fun. I just feel like I've spoken enough. I just want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, so overall, I guess, I'm super negative about this team just because of what they've done to me for the last, what's it been now, 16 years. But I do see flashes. I think Cade's probably even taken another step this year in a functional offense. I think Ivy's playing better. I think this team probably in a couple months, you're looking at a team that's competitive every night. I still don't think they'll win a lot of games. But I think the nice thing is with JB, you won't have those games where they just completely roll over and give up a lot of nights.
Yeah.
And I think that's just great for the fans because Detroit has some of the most loyal fans across all sports. Like they love sports so much. And I feel like the product the Pistons have been putting on the floor for the last, decade plus has been really disrespectful for the most part. They had a couple good years, but I think that my bold prediction for this team is that they'll be lovable losers at the end of the year. Like people will have a lot of joy with this team because I think there will be a lot of nights where they're a decent watch, they're playing with a lot of energy, and they're actively trying to win. Whether they do or not remains to be seen. But I think that this team will have a sort of bad news bears vibe to them. Like people will latch onto them and they'll be like, this team was at least fun. And if I went to see them and I paid $100, it was worth my money type of deal.
I think that's a great way to put it. And like, I think that's with a new, basically front office, a new coach, a roster that's like we've just discussed, probably due for change once again in the next 8 months or whenever the next off season is. Like, I think that's fine. And like, I just, what I like you mentioned there, like with JB, you don't think that like the team will roll over. And I don't know, like maybe tonight, like I feel like they didn't fully roll over. Like it didn't get out to 2025. Like I feel like it would have this time last year. And I know that's almost a pathetic low bar to have, but I just really don't want to see post All-Star break, like end of March, early April, like half the teams, Motor City Cruise guys, like what we've seen the past few seasons. Like I don't know what the win total will be, but yeah, I really am past the days of watching tanking lineups. Like I want to see these young guys play the whole season if they can. And then if at this deadline, if the Pistons aren't in playing contention, like trade Tobias if you can, trade THJ if he's worth anything, or Beasley. Like even if they're helping, like I think I want to see them capitalize on getting some picks back for those players. But it's still very early in the season. But
yeah, the only tough part with that is it's like, at what point do you stop punishing Cade and Ivy and stuff?
no, it's
like,
fair.
If you get rid of Tobias and Malik and THJ, like all you're doing is putting Cade and Ivy back in the same situation they were last year. It's like at some point you have to. I won't be super vulgar, but like kind of like we say in America, like poop or get off. I guess I'll say it like PG, poop or get off the toilet.
Yeah,
like you gotta eventually invest in these guys with real meaningful minutes with good rotations.
Yeah.
You can't just keep saying, "Oh, we're bad again." It's the trade deadline. We're bailing out. We're giving up the last 26 games of the season, and just hurting these guys. Because all these other guys that are really good and young, for the most part, they're playing for something. You got your Scotty Barnes and stuff like that, your LaMelos, but most of these guys that we think of like very highly as young players are playing a lot of meaningful minutes, a lot more than Cade has for sure.
Yeah, no, and I think just to clarify, like I wasn't saying trade all three vets, but like if you can get something for one of them and you've only won like 20, like, well, I do agree with you. Like at some point, like last year was a great example of like just because you give your young guys 30 minutes a night doesn't mean it's good for development. Like I think we saw that for sure. So look, I'm with you. You need some stability, but I also think like if they've won like 17 games or something and it's not going, I hope it's not like this, but I'd like to think maybe you do try to get something because Beasley will be a free agent at the end of the year. I think THJ is expiring. But anyway, I'm getting into the weeds.
I mean, those guys, like, you can definitely get a second or whatever for them, but it's like, I guess I'm kind of like also sick about those just, oh, we'll sign a vet, we'll trade him for a second.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, okay, I get it. Like, but how much are second round picks impacting this Ross? I mean, I trust Trajan more than I trusted or trust Troy to make those second round picks matter. But like, we were trading for all these second round picks, and then Troy was just like, okay, I'm gonna draft some guy. I'm gonna draft a stowaway from Europe. I'm gonna draft a guy that has no chance of making this roster. I'm gonna draft Arn Tellum's nephew. Like, whatever you want to do. Like, come on. I mean, we got it. Like, these fringe trades on the margins. I'm just kind of sick of the way they seem to always play out for us, which is generally like, okay, we did get a second round pick, but we also drafted Buddy Boeheim. So
yeah, it's tough. I think we're all, like you mentioned it, like the past, I've been a fan for 12 years. I think you said 16 years. I think.
Oh no, I've been a fan since I've been watching games since about 2001, 2002.
Oh well, there you go. Your whole
Yeah,
life,
I've been in the trenches.
yeah, like so. But I think at least the team was good for those early years. You started watching, like, I mean,
Yeah, you've never seen good basketball, really.
oh, I'm not even comparing it to myself. I'm just saying, like, the past 12 to 14 years, whatever it is, like, I think we're all scarred from that when watching each of these games, particularly last year, that we're like, oh no, it's going to be the Monty Williams Pistons. Like, and I think I feel that, like, when they were down 4 and you mentioned that, it just felt like an avalanche was coming from the Cavs. Like, I feel that, but part of me is trying to hope blindly that, they earned to get back within 4 and that, yeah, this is a different team. But, I guess where we'll close it out, Cody, Boston tomorrow. I think no one expects them to win this game. It is on their home floor, which is, for me, this season, I feel like they're going to struggle on the road because of the defense, whatever, the young players, energy. But I think at home is where they need to establish themselves as like I want to say 500 team. Like, I think they should be trying to get 18 to 21 wins there. Like, I think this is where they can actually knock off some teams. So, I know it's a back-to-back, but it is at home. What are your thoughts, expectations?
I mean, Wes or Blake mentioned it, but I think that the nice thing is like only 2 guys played heavy minutes tonight. So not your traditional back-to-back in which, a bunch of guys went, super deep. I guess you can kind of also hope that Boston maybe comes out a little slow because they didn't have their players playing late in that game. That Washington game got out of hand in the 4th, I think. So you can kind of lean on that. I mean, obviously last year we played them tough a couple times. And I think a lot of that was just like, oh, it's the Pistons, I have a night off type of deal. And I think maybe it only being game 3, it's probably too early for the Celtics to be like, oh yeah, we can take a night off. We're 27 games above 500. We're tired. All these guys are pretty fresh and young. But I think tomorrow, the key is really going to be, how does THJ, whoever they decide to put on Tatum, how do they hold up? Because I mean, is it Cade on Tatum, and how much energy is that sucking out of him? And then so who guards Tatum first? Because then that determines who guards Jaylen Brown. And I think those are both really tough matchups for this team. And then I'm just looking for them to come out and really, really battle. Yeah. I don't care if you're down 14 in the 3rd quarter. Like, keep fighting.
Yeah.
And maybe you get a little lucky. They start missing shots because what the Celtics are going to do. They're going to come out and put up 35 to 43 pointers. So I'm like, maybe you catch them on a bad shooting night, and then maybe from there you can get a couple good runs and stay close. I'm expecting 10 to 12 point loss, I'd say, tomorrow. But I think very competitive game, and I think it'll either be a run in the 2nd or the 4th quarter that really buries us. Like, I could see this game being like, I don't know, maybe the start of the 2nd quarter, it's 30 to 27 Celtics, and they just come out and have a 17 to 4 run or something. And then it's up to 18, and we fight the whole game, but we can never really get it that close. Or I think it'll be the 4th. We'll be close. We'll be within 5 or something, and they'll go on a late run to get up 14 or so and bury us. But I think it'll be competitive for most of the game. I think there'll be a stretch of 5 to 6 minutes where Boston really flexes their muscles. But I think the other what would be friggin' the other 40 to 42 minutes of the game will be about as competitive as you can expect for a matchup where one team is just way more talented than the other.
Yeah. Well put, my man. I agree. I think they're going to show, like, I'd like to think they're going to come out with great energy, start well, good first quarter where it's even or one team leads by a couple of buckets. And then, it's either the 2nd or 3rd quarter. I think the Celtics put together that big run that you mentioned, like a 17 to 4 run, something like that. But look, man, do you have any other thoughts?
No, but I would just like to add, like Wes and Blake did. I mean, I honestly think that this is a genius idea. I was laughing about it before I got in here. I was like, I wish I would have thought of this because it's like it's a more structured kind of Twitter space, I think, which
Yeah.
is like I think it's a really good idea, and I really like what you're doing. So everybody who's watching, like, subscribe, and I
You
encourage
legend.
anyone. Jack's going to be open. I know Jack, decently well, at least for a guy who's shot the, we can't say the word, but I'm being respectful of YouTube and your algorithm. But Jack's a really nice guy, and I feel like if you want to come up, he'll let you come up, and you'll have a great conversation with him. He's obviously really easy to talk to, and he knows his stuff. So I encourage anyone
Absolutely.
else out there to if you watched tonight and saw what you liked, come up here and talk, and let your voices be heard in the Pistons community.
You legend, mate. That means a lot to me, man. So thank you so much. Like, been a pleasure having you on. Gotten like so many comments, so much love for you. So you are welcome whenever you want. Come on here.
I'll be I watch all 82, so I'd like to try to find a way to at least make it up here for 10% or something like that.
Absolutely, man. You are welcome whenever. You kind of mentioned it, but tell the people where they can find you one more time. Because you know the game very well. You watch every game, and I can't say the word, but there's no bull with you. You're pretty straight shooter, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Good talking hoops with you.
Yeah, I think like I said, no fly zone 906 on Twitter. And that'll probably be where you can find me most of the time. I don't think I'll be doing much else. But I do like the Twitter because I think I can be a little bit more colorful with my language, so to speak. I'm actually impressed. I don't think I swore one time up here with you, Jack,
I don't
which
think
is
you
like
have.
probably a record for me in a long form conversation. So I think, catch me on there, and I'll starting those up again, and then I think I'll be back up here a couple more times at least this season to talk with Jack.
Absolutely. Well, I'd love to have you on, man. So that'll do it, man. Thank you so much once again. Been a pleasure, and you are welcome anytime.
Yeah, Jack, same to you, man. I love what you're doing, and I'm rooting you on every step of the way, man.
Thank you so much, man. You have a good night. We'll
You
talk
too.
soon. All right. This is the final call out. I don't have anyone else after Cody. I'm just checking my DMs now. But as Cody mentioned, guys, like this post-game show is for all of you to come up and share your thoughts. Like, the idea behind it isn't for me to, obviously I share some of my thoughts, but I want to hear and talk through how you guys are feeling, how, get all those emotions off you. I spoke about it on last live stream, and I can see some of the same people in here, like Derek Brown, appreciate you. Spiral Trigger, appreciate you. Just Football Academy Australia, appreciate you. I know that's Rocco or Rocky. Sorry if I got your name wrong, but I appreciate you from Sydney. But this, like, if you guys want to come up, please DM me on Instagram or Twitter, because this show is for you guys to come get your thoughts off. Like, for me, like in Australia here, before I started making this content, I did not know other Pistons fans existed in Australia. Therefore, I never really got to chat Pistons. And that kind of pushed me in the direction to do this, which I'm grateful for. But at the same time, I know as a fan, I would have loved to be able to come up and talk Pistons. Like, we can talk about anything. We don't have to talk about X's and O's or anything too crazy. We can talk about whatever you want to do with the Pistons. I absolutely love hearing people's stories about how they became a Pistons fan, who their favorite player is. We can talk about anything. This doesn't even have to be about the game, but I just want to reiterate, like, this show is for you guys to come up and have your say, have your voice heard. And yeah, whether it's like tonight, get some frustration off you, or when they eventually win a game, which maybe we'll be back tomorrow celebrating a win, we can ride the highs of a win. But it doesn't look like anyone else is going to be coming up for today's show. So I think I'm going to wrap it up here. But just want to say shout out to everyone once again for tuning in. I appreciate all the support, and we're going to be doing these for every game. Every game I plan to be here, and if for some reason I can't, you'll know about it in advance. But final thing is, if you want to come up for tomorrow's game against the Celtics, feel free to message me after the game, but it would be helpful if you message me now before the game, as early as possible, if you think you want to come up and chat about the game. But yeah, appreciate you all. Disappointing game. I'm gonna now jump off and record my game review, but so check that out. But yeah, appreciate you all jumping on, and I hope you all have a good night, day, whatever time of the day it is for you. But as always, go Pistons.